What is going on, Alabama fans? Chris Daughtry here with the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. Finally back from vacation, and I'm super excited to finally be back in the studio and talk to you guys as well. So we're going to talk about the latest news and rumors out there surrounding the Crimson Tide. 247 Sports dropped an article yesterday, I believe is when that article came out, on Keon Keeley and Kam DewBerry. Both of those guys getting a lot of buzz coming out of SEC Media Days, and also just going into this season could be guys that could possibly contribute for Alabama this season. Also going to touch on some recruiting rumors out there. A new BamaOnline prediction for a quarterback is out there. And also USA Today has dropped their SEC quarterback rankings. So we're going to talk about why they disrespected Ty Simpson and honestly why it might not be a bad thing for Alabama this year. Before we get into that, though, we are only 40 days away now from Alabama football getting back into the fold for us to really get excited again on Saturdays. So if you guys are excited, make sure you drop a Roll Tide Roll down in the comment section. The most comments on today's video gets a shout out on a future video. Probably let this one run a couple of days, let you guys get in the comment section there. So we'll give it a couple days, but the most Roll Tides on this video will get a shout out on a future video. All right, coming up first today, Grant Hughes of 247 Sports dropped an article basically saying that Keon Keeley and Kam DewBerry, your left guard transfer from Texas A&M, saying both of those guys could possibly be top standouts for Alabama going into the 2025 season. First up, let's touch on Keon Keeley. This is what Matt Zenitz, he kind of took some quotes from Matt Zenitz in this article talking about Keon Keeley, saying his physical ability has never been a problem with Keon. Frankly, what was needed was growth from a maturity standpoint. He has shown improvement in those areas this offseason. It's to the point where he is set up to be a contributor as a rotational piece this season. He has some versatility, and they can use him in some different ways. I don't expect him to start, but Alabama is going to rotate different guys along the defensive line, and Keon will contribute as a rotational figure. That's definitely something we've talked about a lot, right? Especially going back to those videos we did last season, breaking down the defensive line here. We talked about the fact that Kane Womack really does love to utilize this defensive line in just a ton of different ways, whether, that was last year, Jamarian Latham kind of playing more on the outside. They just moved guys around a lot. And I think that's something that this year you're really going to see probably even more of than you saw last season. I think the only guy that's probably going to stay in his spot is going to be Tim Keenan. Maybe Jordan Renaud and LT Overton are going to strictly be at that bandit spot. But when you look at guys like Jeremiah Beeman, James Smith, Keon Keeley, I think those guys are really going to be versatile in this Alabama defense. And you look, I just wanted to go through and kind of look at some of the weights on some of these guys along the defensive line. Like I said, Tim Keenan probably going to just stick there, at that nose guard spot. But then, you got Jeremiah Beeman. He's 314. James Smith at 297. Edric Hill at 284. Keon Keeley right there in that same, kind of weight class as those other guys. So kind of think Keon Keeley is going to be in that same realm where, technically he's at that bandit spot right now, but I do think this is going to be a guy that when you just, go through the season, you just kind of watch the alignment of this Alabama defensive line this year. I think he's going to be playing bandit. I think they're going to move him inside a little bit as well. I think that's something that you're really going to see a lot from him this year, and it's not just going to be him. It's going to be guys like James Smith and Jeremiah Beeman as well. And then you also have Steve Mbamua there sitting there at 302 right now. This dude is just absolutely shredded. Looks like the Incredible Hulk. I think Alabama's defensive line is going to be really, really good this season, and hopefully Keon Keeley is a guy that's going to be able to contribute as well for Alabama's defensive line. So what do you guys think? Will Keon Keeley really be a contributor for Alabama this season? Do you think he plays over 100 snaps in 2025? That's just an arbitrary, random number that I just kind of pulled out of thin air. But let me know what you guys think. Will Keon Keeley play more than 100 snaps in 2025? It's the pinned comment of today's video, so get down there. Let me know what you guys think. Type Y for yes or N for no. The next player they listed was Keon DewBerry, the transfer offensive guard out of Texas A&M. He's going to be in a, battle at that left guard spot between him and Geno VanDeMark. And really, Keon DewBerry, when you talk about him, you're going to be talking about experience. I think that's the big key for him. Really hasn't been a guy that has been able to hold on to a starting spot when he was at Texas A&M, but in his time there, man, he played over 1,000 snaps for Texas A&M and really wasn't really that bad. I think injuries were really one of those things that kind of took him off the field, maybe some inconsistencies with what they were wanting to do as well. And he also got a lot of praise last week, whether that was from Tim Keenan or some other guys. I know Caden Proctor talked about him at SEC Media Day as well. Keon DewBerry, Geno VanDeMark, this is going to be a very, very interesting battle at that left guard spot. Remember a couple of months ago, I actually said Geno VanDeMark, it was my prediction that he was going to win that left guard spot just strictly based off of last year and what he did and the trust that he garnered with this Alabama offensive coaching staff going in and out with Jaden Roberts. But Keon DewBerry, I mean, he's going to be right on his heels. He did not transfer to Alabama to sit the bench in his last season of eligibility. This is what Matt Zenit said about Keon DewBerry and, some hype that he's really been hearing about him. He said, I've had multiple scouts bring him up unprompted. They could ultimately see him being someone who not only gets drafted next year, but could end up being a top 3 round guy. That was not feedback that I was expecting to get from somebody who did not even start for Texas A&M last season. If that is something that you can get out of Keon DewBerry, being a day 1 or day 2 NFL draft pick going into next year's NFL draft, that's going to be just a really, really good thing for Alabama and their offensive line. We talked about Pro Football Focus, having Alabama's offensive line as the top offensive line in the country going into this season. You can take that with a little bit of a grain of salt if you want, considering last year the offensive line, was pretty inconsistent at times, and they also had them number 1 going into the season last year as well. But between both of these guys, man, almost 1,000 snaps for Geno VanDeMark in his career, over 1,100 snaps for Keon DewBerry. I think at that left guard spot, no matter who ends up winning that job, I think you're going to have a pretty solid player there, right beside Caden Proctor and Parker Brailsford. And then you have, Jaden Roberts at that right guard spot. And then Will Conformby, hopefully he also takes another step to just be better than he was last season, because Alabama really does need some consistency and they need some continuity there at that offensive line as well, because last season you had a lot of guys in and out, whether that was Jaden Roberts and Geno VanDeMark or Tyler Booker, having to slide over to the tackle spot with Caden Proctor at the beginning of the season. Whole lot of movement was going on last season for Alabama's offensive line. Hopefully this year it can be more consistent and they can really have 5 guys that really play the majority of the snaps this year, and maybe Keon DewBerry, Geno VanDeMark, whoever ends up losing that left guard battle ends up being, a plug-and-play guy when somebody's helmet comes off or, somebody gets banged up or something like that. But if Alabama can get, very good play out of Keon DewBerry to where he can be a first or second day guy in next year's NFL draft, that is nothing but positivity for Alabama along their offensive line. I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics as well. You guys can get this really nice Alabama quarter zip here. It is on sale right now for only $55. It is originally priced at $90. And I know it's the summertime. You're telling me, Chris, it's 120 degrees outside. Why do I need a long sleeve shirt, quarter zip, whatever you want to call it right now? Well, that's when they go on sale. You're really going to want to get this price now instead of waiting until it actually gets cold into the wintertime. It's going to go back up to $90, so you might as well get it right now just by going to chatsports.com/Bama QTR zip. That's the letters QTR for quarter zip there. All you got to do is go to that link. It's down in the comment section and the description of today's video. Was $90, now on sale for only $55. All right, let's go back into some recruiting news here, and we'll touch on some more stuff tomorrow probably as well. But BamaOnline has finally put in an official prediction for the Crimson Tide to land 4-star quarterback Tayden Kaawa out of Utah. The top two teams here for Kaawa are both Alabama and BYU, but let's be completely honest. If you're picking between Alabama and BYU, it's probably going to be Alabama. And I understand, some quarterbacks out there, they don't want to, enter into a class that has multiple quarterbacks. Just kind of that's what it is right now in college football. But Alabama's been pretty upfront with both GETS A SHOUTOUT, their current quarterback commit in this 2026 class, as well as Tayden Kaawa. They were going to be taking 2 quarterbacks in this class. And look, he's just another guy that kind of fits the exact same, frame that we've been seeing from Alabama in this new coaching staff. 6'5", 235 pounds, kind of goes into the same, bucket as a guy like Austin Mack. He's kind of gone up and down in the rankings a little bit, but, this is going to be a guy that is going to probably sit for, 3-4 years before he ever gets any playing time for Alabama. And if you can get a guy that's okay with that, that's probably a really good thing as well. And, you're talking about your current Alabama quarterback room. You only have 3 guys. You get GETS A SHOUTOUT for next year, but you're hoping that Ty Simpson plays good enough to go off to the NFL draft, so then you're down to 3 again. You really would like to have probably a 4th body in that quarterback room as well. And Tayden Kaawa could be that guy. Like I said, he was predicted by the BamaOnline staff, and they are, outside of that stuff that happened the other day, they're batting pretty much 1,000 right now with their official predictions. So we'll see what happens. He will end up committing tomorrow. And if he does commit, we will have a short for you guys. And do not miss out. Make sure you guys are subscribed right here to the Alabama Football Report. Once the season finally gets started, we will have our watch parties. I know a lot of you guys were hanging out with us last year during our watch parties. We have a whole lot of fun. We do giveaways, and we do just a lot of partying here at the channel. So do not miss out. Make sure you guys are subscribed to youtube.com/@RollTideTV. All right, lastly on today's show, before we get out of here, Ty Simpson just continues to get disrespected in these preseason quarterback rankings. And you're probably like, Chris, what does it matter? It honestly really doesn't matter, but, it's fun to talk about every time somebody drops these quarterback rankings. I'm going to talk about him because there is a consistent trend here with Ty Simpson being pretty much outside the top 10. This one was from USA Today, from Brett Topmeyer as well. And you see right there, man, this is the thing about these quarterback rankings. You have Arch Manning there at number 1. You have Garrett Nussmeier at 2. Lenora Sellers, DJ Lagway, John Mateer rounding out your top 5. Okay, I'm, fine with that. Maybe you could argue, some of the, you could swap some guys out. Maybe you think Lenora Sellers is better than Garrett Nussmeier or something like that. But then you get into, number 6 through 10, Austin Simmons at Ole Miss. I mean, what has he even played? I don't even know. Diego Pavia should be above him. We saw what he's done the past couple of seasons at Vanderbilt and, New Mexico State. I just don't understand why a guy like Austin Simmons is so high. And then you also have Marcel Reed. What do you have, one good game last year against LSU? Pretty much everybody had a good game against LSU at one point or another. Taylon Green from Arkansas, I'll be honest, I really do like him and I like his ability. But he is at Arkansas, so we'll see what happens there. I'm not trying to, bash Taylon Green or anything. I actually do kind of like him at that quarterback spot. But then Gunnar Stockton at 10 for Georgia. You're telling me Gunnar Stockton? You're telling me Marcel Reed, Diego Pavia, Austin Simmons are all better than Ty Simpson? I understand that Ty Simpson has not really played a lot in college football, but outside of Diego Pavia, 6 through 10, they haven't either. Taylon Green actually did play the entire season last year for Arkansas, and he also, transferred from another college as well. But I'm just not buying it. I do not think Ty Simpson is outside the top 10 in the SEC in quarterbacks. I think by the end of the season, Ty Simpson's going to be in the top 5. And, at the end of the day, we'll touch on it here in just a second. But I don't think it's really a bad thing for Alabama or Ty Simpson, to be honest with you guys, that he's ranked outside the top 10 right now. But I want to hear from you guys. Be completely honest with me. Rank Ty Simpson among SEC quarterbacks. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of today's show. My biggest beef with these SEC quarterback rankings is I don't understand how you can rank one guy on expected growth. You know, you see the flashes from what they maybe had with 100 or 200 snaps in their career so far, but then you dock another guy like Ty Simpson because he hasn't played a lot. I just don't understand that kind of mindset. And it continues to happen in these quarterback rankings to Ty Simpson. Now, honestly, I'm fine with Ty Simpson being underrated because in the past, 10 years, Alabama really hasn't had that. A quarterback going into the season that's underrated. I think, honestly, maybe I'm missing somebody. Maybe you could say Mac Jones was probably underrated, but, you go back to a guy like Jalen Hurts. He ends up winning that quarterback battle in his freshman season. Obviously, there were no expectations for him, but outside of that, you talk about Jalen Hurts going into his next year, extremely high expectations. Bryce Young, Tua, Jalen Milroe, was thought of as a Heisman favorite last couple of years. So, you take some of that pressure off of a guy like Ty Simpson, and obviously at Alabama as well, where the pressure is always to win a national championship. I think it's actually a positive thing that going into 2025, the national media, the national narrative is that Ty Simpson, going into what his fourth year now, hasn't been able to beat out guys like Jalen Milroe to win Alabama's starting quarterback job. I just think it's a positive thing for Alabama, and it takes some of that pressure off of Ty Simpson and this Alabama coaching staff, and this is just the Alabama team as a whole.